Bruchem Aboim, B'Shem Yegin Shir Torah, Moshe Boston. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's Shaar. All the men are here in the main shul, all the women who are upstairs and downstairs, everyone who's tuning in through Kehilas and the live broadcast. Bruchem Aboim to everyone. I'd like to give a big shekayach to Mr. and Mrs. Aaron Tauber for the support of tonight's Shaar. L'ili Nishmas Aviv Rabbi Yosef Viener Alav Shalom, whose 50th yahrzeit is tonight. Chav Ches Tammuz Lenishmosei Tzura B'Tzor Chaim. Tonight we have the cover to have with us once again Rabbi Yosef Viener, Shlita, Rav and Kehilas Shaar Hashomyaim, Wesley Hills, came to speak to us on the important topic of family dynamics, monetary issues, and other responsibilities. I'd like to remind the Olam that Irgun Shir Torah relies on the support of the Tzibur to bring the Shiurim to the community. Call 718-851-8651 or email tapecenter@yeshivanet.com and sponsor a Shaar and have a chelek in the Harbotzas HaTorah D'Rabbim. It's my cover to call on Rav Viener Shlita for tonight's Shaar.
It's always a covet and a pleasure to be back. Thank Rabbi Bold and all the very chashuv assistants who set up in such short amount of time and the speed and accuracy. Almost, is it tall enough? Okay. Testing. We have, as usual, a tremendous amount of material to cover, and we're not going to do it. Last year we covered almost 40%. If you weren't here last year, it's not ma'akev, but we're going to continue on many of the family issues. Kibbut Avim, chinuch, spousal is a never-ending topic, and after tonight, Cheshish will have a few more years. The material on the table, I don't bring the CDs anymore, they're too cumbersome, so a Yid Tzaddik in the shul managed to fit well over 1,000 shiurim in a USB, which is free because all the shiurim are free. We just charge $10 to make another USB. If you could do it for me, I would say please copy as many as you want and spread it around. It just saves us time. So you can help yourself on the table upstairs and downstairs, and there are some, I think the last 20 or 30 of the remaining copies of this printing of the contemporary halacha. You can help yourself as well. The topic this past year in my shul for Night Seder was Kibbut Avim. It's 1-2 simanim, depending how you count them, in Shulchan Aruch. Much to my amazement, it just ended. It was well over 100 shiurim just on Kibbut Avim. And tonight's topic is not only on Kibbut Avim. So the daring attempt to try to give a synopsis is, I think, even for me, too daring, because I don't want to speak too quickly. So I took off what I think is a section of them which focuses on monetary issues. And I would also like to get to, time permitting, some monetary issues, parents vis-a-vis children, like whose money is that bar mitzvah gift? That's a question I've been asked many times, interestingly enough. The second part, if we get to it, if not for next year, will be the money sharing and other pressurized issues within the spouses. So let's begin. The Kibbut Avim aspect we'll focus on, where I begin the halachas, and I hope many of these shaylas are not nageh to anybody here. And if you call afterwards to get some details, because this is going to be in broad strokes, you must, if you're ever faced with these shaylas, ask a shayla for each scenario, because a slight detail will change it. That's true in any area of halacha, certainly when it comes to interpersonal relationships, fitting it in with the ben al-mechaver, ben al-makam, the gzeres hakasiv. And as Akdama, I'd like to mention two things. Number one, kibbut av v'em is in the Aseret Adibit for a reason. It's one of the more challenging mitzvahs because if you're zeicha to have parents and live near your parents, you're zeicha to have children and trying to be mechanech them to keep the dinim while being a parent that's balancing the mechila aspect versus the demand for some yira and some kavod, which has been certainly downplayed, rightfully so in certain areas. We've bent the tree too far in other areas. General problem whenever you try to fix something, you got to make sure the tree's in the middle, which is hard to do. And for the children in the room, it's important to know that this is a din that comes up all the time, and if your children are coming home, Bachar are coming home ben azmanim, the Pesachim have an interesting lashon, like Hashomyaim kedem achag, you have to chazer over the dinim of Pesach and Shavuos and Sukkot. So before you walk in the door, you have to chazer over and learn some of the halachas, hashkafas, and musar of it. And as grown adults, if your parents are still alive, Baruch Hashem, and you have the opportunity to visit them, it behooves you to do a little chazara, a little mental synopsis before you walk in the door. Because otherwise we assume, I've been doing this so many years. If I don't have it down pat by now, it's too late. It's not true. It can always be improved on, and I feel that a lot of the people just don't know the parameters. Most of these dinim have parameters, and they all have parameters, but you have to know how to apply it to your situation. So look at it as an opportunity. If, rare occasion, you're losing the battle more often than you're winning, so then it's a question of how often you should be visiting. If you're in negative territory, many people love that line because, I'm putter. You don't want to be putter in this zarichas yamim for you. You don't want your children to be putter zarichas yamim for them. You want them to be able to exercise their right and their privilege to be machabed the parents. You also have to know when it becomes the law of diminishing returns. The Maila Kibbut Av V'em is that besides being from the chamuras of all the dinim, both in the challenge, the opportunity, and in the Shaar, only two places the problem is zarichas yamim. It's also an opportunity just in the Beron Chaver aspect. The Achronim discuss is it Beron Chaver, Beron Makom, it's probably a little of both. Haftarech Chamecha by all Yidden. You can become it by parents even more. Haftarech Chamecha is something that we apply sometimes selectively. We choose which people we want to like and which people we don't want to like. Well, here the Torah says you have to love them. The Chai Adam brings down that a chelik of the mitzvah kibbut av v'em, besides the kibbut and the servicing, and not being seised devram and not arguing with them, and the Ases and Lesa says you have to actually love them. That's a chiddush to a lot of people. You say, well, that should come naturally. Well, most good scenarios it does, and once in a while in a troubled relationship it doesn't always, depending on the tkufa. But it's not real kibbut if you don't respect them and you don't have that ava. And we'll pick up on that later. So it's a chance to Makayim after Echemech, it's a chance to be down the Kap's Chutz, which you have to do for all Yidden, Kol Shekain for parents, and all the other Ben Adam L'Chaver issues which we try to focus on and struggle day in and day out. Let's discuss first the Chai Adam. The Chai Adam does say you should look at them as people who are Gedolim and Nechbedei Aretz. And what if they're not? Gedolei Olam. What if they're like average? So the Chai Adam knew that kasha. Chaim Shulevitz has a famous shmuz, and his Kabbalah is that you have to try to focus on a midah or two where they excel and focus on that, unless they excel in everything. And the taka are from the Nechbedei and Gedolei Olam. But if not, everybody's good at many things, and certain people are better at some things. You should try to find those midas and look hard. Somebody who grew up with parents who went through the Holocaust, you don't have to look very far. If they survived the Satmarov and they used to asking for a bracha, I said, just walk into any shtibel. In the morning, he picks up his sleeve. If there's a number on there and he's putting on tefillin, he's already a hero. So that's for 2 generations ago, an easy way to be mechabed them. Everybody's a hero. You just have to find out where it is and focus on that, both the Ava and the Kavod. The Chut Shani of Nissim Shlita says that there's another angle, not a steer to the first one, and that is, what would you do for somebody who saved your life? What would you do for somebody who saved you from financial ruin? What would you do for somebody who brought you up, saved your life in Ruchnius and Gashmius? The answer is everything. Do you focus on the fact that they are inherently very chashuv, Gedei L'Olam, Nech B'dei Aretz? Doesn't make a difference. To you, they're your heroes. And he says that's an insight in how to try to maximize and fulfill this chayadam, which is brought down from Kadmonim. So this is something to think about as we dive into the more challenging scenarios. One more, Meshech Chachma, fascinating Meshech Chachma. The pasuk in Eschanan, Kabedes Avicha, is Kasher Tzivcha Hashem. So the Meshech Chachma says, Kasher Tzivcha Hashem, even though Hakaras HaTov dictates that you have full kibbut and yira from them, Kasher Tzivcha Hashem means it's Exeris HaKosov. So what does that mean? Well, it means even if you don't understand it, and even if you think you're right, that's a common human condition, and you still have to mechaber them unless what they're saying or doing is going to swing a national election or do some damage. You can't really argue unless they ask your opinion. It's one of the first sifim in Hilchos Kibbut Aveim. Meshech Chachma says, and what happens if you come up with the brilliant or not so brilliant argument that, well, they really didn't do too much for me, which is probably not true. But I've had many discussions with young adults, and they say, well, one Chacham told me, he was 16. He said, isn't there a Gemara in Eruvin that it's better we shouldn't have been created? I thought that was an original line. I've heard it since then a few times. I said, yeah, the Gemara, though, doesn't negate the Hakaras HaTov of those who helped create you. It certainly doesn't negate the Hakaras HaTov of those who nurtured you and fed you and put up with all your shenanigans and helped you get to where you want to go. So he said, what happens if I'm losing the battle and I'm in negative territory? I said, do tshuva. What does that have to do with them? So he liked the Havamina. Beisham Beisil argued for so many years, and they maybe ended up asking it's Yesitei Shalom Nivra, nothing to do with Kibbut Aveim. So get rid of that argument. The second argument is what happens if they did a very bad job, which is, again, an accusation you'll hear from some people. Sometimes it's true. Most of the time they're trying their best. Or if the child was adopted and they don't know their parents, they don't know who they are, they heard they were adopted on day one or hour one, and the parents didn't do anything to bring them up and feed them. Well, still had him. That's already one milah. Without her, he wouldn't be here. And the Meshech Chachma says it's irrelevant. Kasher Tzivcha Hashem is dafka in the midbar. He says something very interesting. He says in the midbar, the parents didn't have to do any laundry because the Anonim dry clean 24/7, maybe 24/6. I don't know. It's l'mayla mederech hateva. Maybe it happened on Shabbos. And the mon fell down in Hashomyaim. And there's Be'er Shel Miriam. So that means no shopping, no cooking, and the kids loved it because you could just think about ice cream, and the mun became ice cream. And pizza, you can eat whatever you want. And no laundry. Now, in reality, the Meshech Chachma knows that's not the real input to the parent, is not that they're feeding you and doing your laundry. But that's a big part of the load, especially Shisha B'keres Echad. Each family here had about 97 children. So Meshech Chachma says, Kasher Tzivcha Hashem in the midbar, even though you can claim they don't do the regular things parents do running a household, it doesn't make a difference. The reason it doesn't make a difference is it's a kassav, but even if you look into the Tom, they still had you. And they're still giving you direction in your ruchnius. And even if they didn't, and even if they weren't from, there are more paskins for parents who are Risham, there's no kibud. The Mechaber says there is kibud. Chaim suggests you machmir for the chaver, even though Mekadin, Ashkenazim passing like the Ramah, but it's irrelevant. It's hard to find good Risham these days, Baruch Hashem. They don't make them like they used to. Most of them are a Tina Shanishba. They didn't know any better. You decided they were Risham. The Al-Chashochan says already, Risham doesn't mean they did Averis. It means they did really horrible things on a consistent basis, and it was their fault. So when the teenagers, by and large, start with that taina, I tell them it's probably not good to paskin anybody's a Russia, certainly your parents, even if you happen to be in a tight spot and in a machlekes with them. Once in a while, there are horrible cases where the taka did horrible things, and you have to tell the kid you're potter and get away because psychologically you're not going to survive, and I will get to more of that later. But that's hopefully relatively rare. So Meshech Chachma says, Kasher Tzivcha Hashem is even if they didn't do what you think they should be doing, it's irrelevant. Let's begin. Two shilas. I'll share with you the first two. Zilberstein always has interesting ones, and in Kibbut Aveim. He has two of them, which, again, I hope these are not negayah to anybody. The din is that if the father asks for something, the mother asks for something at the same time, you first get the coffee for the father and then the mother. Of course, the right thing to do when the father finds out that the mother also asked for a coffee, he stops you and tells you, go get one for mommy. And then she says, no, take care of Tati first, and they have a huge machlokes on which one you should do. That's the normal scenario. And then the kid learns something about midas and shalom bayis, and everybody's good to go. If Lamaisa, the father, needs his coffee ASAP because he's falling asleep in the middle of a katsais, a very common scenario, and he needs it desperately, so then he can ask for it first. If they're no longer married, unfortunately, Shaila and the Peskim, they're no longer married because one of them is no longer alive, but let's leave that one for a different year. They're no longer married because unfortunately they got a divorce. Now the din is clearly in the Mechaber, you could pick whichever one you want, which is a dangerous game also. So I think it's just better to, when you're visiting one, you just do everything you're supposed to do. How often when you're visiting one does the other one call and say, I need a cup of coffee now? Unless he's following you around and trying to cause trouble, which is this next Shaila. A fellow was warning, terrorizing his son, who was about to make a chasna, that if he invites his mother, he's not coming. I've dealt with this before. Dealt with the bar mitzvahs and other such simchas. Good way to ruin a simcha. And he says more than that. He says, not only am I not coming, I'm not paying. That raises the ante. Now, normally the fallback position would be, why give in to terrorism? You know, he's making the request, so why? So that's, in a perfect scenario, that's probably the psak. It would be a very short tshuva. Problem over here is the kid in this particular story couldn't afford it. And if the father doesn't pay, he's not going to have a chasna. Now, truth be told, it doesn't really cost anything to make a chasna. A shavaputa. Harayat can be done with a shavaputa. It's a bag of popcorn. I'm not saying that's great for shalom bayis, but Lamaisa, he's normal and he knows you can make a chasna without money, but nobody makes chasna without money. So what's the din? So there's a famous Ran by the story of Dama ben Asina, which any share on this is always referenced to try to figure out what's going on. This very frum guy who did keep it of aim in an incredible way. Shaila and the Mefarshim, why the Gemara only found one case, and it's a guy in Ashkelon. Ganz Klai Yisrael, for Deri Deris, they only found one case. Not for now, but Hala Devrahu. And we all know they came to buy the Evan they needed for the Cheshen, and the key was under his father's pillow, and he didn't wake him up. So the Ran says that we paskin, and for tonight's shir, this is very important to get the Lashon. The Gemara Shayla, who pays the expenses in Kibbut Avim? Mishalav and Mishal Ben. And we paskin Mishalav and Mishal Ben. The father pays if he can afford it. If he can't, well, Mr. Shem get to that as well. So the Ran asks, we paskin Mishalav and Mishal Ben. So why should he have to take a loss on this? He should be able to wake his father up. Ramesha mentions in a tshuva that it's obvious his father wasn't too normal, because if you wake up your father, you say, Ty, you'd be so proud of me, I just lost a $100 million profit. So he'd probably shoot. That's not a normal thing. But he knew his father wanted to sleep. The chiddush over here is, even though it's not a normal thing, most people wouldn't want to sleep with a prophet like this. They wake me up, I'll go back to sleep. I'll go to Florida after this and go back to sleep. But you can't speak to that. If he wants to sleep and he's probably a gvir, I don't want it. I made enough money already. I just want to sleep. Leave me alone. So that is included in the kibbut, even though to most people it wouldn't make much sense. And his mother, from the other Gemara, who spitted him, ripped his clothing. So it's obviously inve geffen. They're both not too normal. And but you have to mechabed that. If it's not doing damage, then you have to mechabed. The Ram wants to know why. Why does he have to give up his money? So first answer is that we paskin mishalav v'lo mishal ben, but not if you're being mitzar the parent. Then you got to give up your own money. And the second teretz is this wasn't a loss. This is meniyas revach. You're just giving up profit. You're not losing money. The stone was still in the safe. You just didn't have the key. It'll be there for another day. These two terutzim are very important. We'll see soon. It's a machlekes, possibly the Mechaber Ramah. And he asked Rabbi Yosef what the din here would be. Rabbi Yosef says if the money's in the bag already, he already said he's going to pay. And he says if he's a Neman, Shaila Zizi, sounds like a Russia. But if he's a Neman, you take his word for it, then the money's there, and by inviting his mother, he's giving up the $20,000 it takes to make the chasna. then to give up the money, according to one teretz, he's not mechuyev to do. And that's the way the Ramah would paskin. And Rabbi Yosef warns, before you act on that and disinvite your mother, you should be careful, because he doesn't sound like he has too much nem on this in the first place. There's another scenario which Shevet Levi has a tshuva on, where this is a little bit more common, where the son either is asking the father for some money for whatever he wants to buy, or the father offered him money, and he's worried maybe he forgot about the offer, so he wants to go and remind the father he needs X amount of money for this project or whatever he wants to buy. But he also knows that the mother gets very nervous when the father gives too much money to the kids. And either there's a shortage of money, or psychologically she thinks there's a shortage of money, or she thinks she's not getting a big enough slice of the pie. I've dealt with all of the above. Normal people. Some of these are less normal. That's not an uncommon scenario. It depends how much money the kids are getting and how spoiled they might be and what the father's spending on. And the child now is faced with the shayla. He either planned on asking for it, or the father said he'd give it to him, but now he just has to ask him for the money or the credit card, and it gets his mother a little nervous. Is he allowed to ask? The Shevet Levi has a long tshuva on this. It's not so pashut. The case, the Shevet Levi says, assuming there's enough money for everybody, she's getting everything she needs. So she decides she wants to be nervous about it. So she's nervous about it, so I have to give up money now. So it depends on how nervous and how much you need the money. At the end of the day, you don't want to get your mother aggravated. So if you're taking the money for something, even if al pi halacha you can, because the father wants to give it to you, and now you're not, so are you not, and therefore you're not going to take a vacation? No. So your mother won't get aggravated. Or is it something that this is the 20th time it's happened, and every time I ask my father for the money, or he tells me whenever you need it, just come to me, and it causes a shalom bayis issue, and I'm aggravating my mother? Well, Shevet Levi mentions it might come a point that you're aggravating the father because he wants to give you the money, and it's his nachas. And he even mentions at the end that if he's giving you a lot of money, like constant support, and you're learning, if the father's nachas, he wants to do it, and the mother's complaining that she feels, maybe she's right, but she feels there's not enough to go around. L'maisa, it's the parents' decision, it's the father's decision. Don't get involved in machlokes between them, but for a frivolous thing, it's certainly not kedai. Meaning, if there's pressure in the house and there are sichsuchim about money, which does happen in certain households, you got to be careful that you're not doing something as a child to be asking for too much or taking too much that creates more of a pressurized situation. And over here, again, Rabbi Yosef says, technically, if the money was promised and it's sort of in the bag, you might not have to give it up, and you might have to tell your mother that, I feel horrible, what do you want me to do? And the mother might say, look, if the choice is, I can't afford it, you can't afford it, the choice is no chasna, I'll stay home and watch the video, even though it's a terrible thing. You'll say, we shouldn't give in to terrorism. Okay, of course we shouldn't, but l'maisa, what happens if the chasna is in 3 nights and it's not going on and he's serious? It's a pretty drastic scenario. I hope if it ever comes up, it's in a much more positive scenario. The second case he mentions, which also I ask everybody, as I do by all the shirim, don't quote anything out of context and stay for the end of the shir. And then on all these things, I have over 110, I think I mentioned. We're expanding on all of these. These are just the quick maskanas, so you can help yourself. Some of them are on the hard drive, the rest are on the website, and if we run out of hard drives, you can get it on the website as well as torahstream.org. And they're all updated over there, and I think these 2 points took me about 5 nights. So we're not going to do justice to it now. We're just trying to put down parameters, starting with the extreme cases. The next extreme case, and I know there's always pushback on this as soon as somebody hears it, there's a very, very delicate balance between trying to figure out, and this needs the input of an objective third party, the children's rabbeim if they're privy to it, the rav of the family, a therapist if they're involved, and we have to protect the children, and we also have to teach them kibbut of aim, and sometimes it goes one way, sometimes it goes the other way. This one, you have to have tremendous respect for this young 14-year-old boy who's obviously very mature. He tells a story that there was a kid who was just bar mitzvahed, and I think he said he was an 8th grader over here, 13, 14 years old. His father was an almond for a long time, which means he's a yasam as well. and the house really wasn't doing well, and the father wasn't doing well. And Baruch Hashem finally got married. Zivik Sheni starts off the case as a wonderful lady, very geschickt, and the house is now going smoothly, and the father was very happy for the first time in many years. That's the good news. This kid was a star Talmud, and at the end of 8th grade, he started going downhill. The Rebbe pulled him aside, and after a long schmooze, finally got to the bottom of what's bothering. There's no 13-year-old is going to say this right away. And he told his Rebbe that, again, the good news is she's a very choshev lady, and in terms of getting things done, my father's very happy. And I have a problem because whenever my father's around, she's very nice to me. And whenever he's not, she's pretty brutal. Now, brutal, no one's getting hurt, but in the truth over here, he's getting hit a little bit, not dangerously hit from the physical standpoint. Wouldn't be much of a discussion over there, but psychologically, this could be very dangerous. And he's struggling because he knows that the only way this is going to stop, he asked her a number of times, like, why are you picking on me? And she mentioned something probably about Cinderella or something like that. This is like almost, it's a real story. It's almost like a classic example. She's not going to do it in front of the husband. It's a new husband, and they get along. And the problem is they get along very well, and the father's never been happier. And the kid is in turmoil because if he brings it up to his father, that's the end of their shalom bayis. And if he doesn't bring it up, that might be the end of him. He doesn't know what to do. So, again, the therapy angle would say, and we have good from therapists in the community, would say, oh, that's horrible, and it is horrible, and you got to save the kid. The Rebbe, who knew him, as Oberstein got the Shaila, and Rabbi Yosef passing the Shaila, all knew that. And in terms of Hilchos Kibbut Av V'Eim is so chomer. If the kid is already struggling with that, means the Havamina, there might be another way to deal with this, and it's not so quick to ruin the father's life and take the wind out of his sails, and after he finally got on his feet again, to start a whole sichsich in the house. On the other hand, if the kid can't handle it, he's only 13, 14 years old, a very mature 13, 14, the fact that he's even struggling with this and didn't blurt it out, which means, again, when we bend the tree, you got to make sure it ends up in the middle. There are hundreds of cases that are dealt with, most of them a lot more kal than this, some of them worse. The Kibbut Av V'Eim has to be front and center. In order to paskin the shaila, you have to be well aware of what the psychological, emotional angle could be over here in terms of the possible damage, and the person you're talking to. There's no one size fits all. What can they handle? Kibbut Av V'Eim is all about what you can handle and how well can you do this mitzvah. And it's about giving nachas to the parents. It's about servicing the parents, which over here is not direct servicing, but he knows how happy his father is. He's been living in the house the last 6 years, and he wasn't happy the last 5 years. Now he's happy again. He doesn't want to ruin that, which is incredibly mature. And Rabbi Yosef was not quick to say, definitely mention something to the father. Obviously, the first thing is maybe somebody else should write a nice, anonymous letter to the mother, and you can print these things out today without signing it, and assuming she doesn't know fingerprinting, just drop it off and say, Havi Yadas, that we know something's going on, and we don't want to tell your husband, and please cut it out. There are other ways to handle this. Push comes to shove, and that's not happening. So then what do you do? But Yosef said, you got to monitor it, and the Rebbe has to monitor it, and make sure the kid is being meisa nefesh, but is emotionally stable. And if that works, he gets incredible schar in saving his father simchas achayim. If he can't, because he's too young and too vulnerable, which might be the case, then you got to tell the father. Haladever, who we would all say as Americans, no, the first time he hears that, that's it, the kids, it's not a schiv, it's not a schiv, he wants to do the right thing. Part of Kibbut Av V'Eim is not just getting coffee for your father, it's helping him out in life, and not disrupting his menuchas hanefesh, which will make him a better father. And often that point will be missed, and Rabbi Yosef, as he's answering the question, does not say, is there a pasha one way or another, he said it has to be monitored, and we have to think of another way to do it, but don't run to say something if the child is trying to be meisa nefesh. And it's interesting. Zobashim himself brings a raya. He actually quotes Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, interestingly enough. Rabbi Yaakov says that if a person is getting hit, not dangerously hit, the danger here is the emotion. A person's getting hit by a mitzvah. Doing a mitzvah, he knows he's going to get hit. Is he potter from the mitzvah? So we know by an assay, you got to spend a fifth of your assets, up to a fifth. Let's just say all your assets. No, getting hit. Talking about she just likes chappering him. She slaps him around a little bit. So the emotional issue could be a bigger danger. We're not downplaying that, but he said just the hitting itself, most people say, I don't have to, I'm doing a mitzvah kibbutz, I got to get hit. So he quotes Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov says that there is a three-way machlokes by giving musar, which we're not very good at. And when you give musar, you have to keep giving musar because most people don't listen to it the first time. Everybody gets very humble. Mani, miani, I can't give musar until I'm perfect. Well, there's a pasuk achet achiach. If we waited till we were perfect, no one would ever be able to give anybody musar. So obviously the pasuk thinks not so. My example, the biggest talker in the shul shouldn't be shushing people. Don't take the worst guy, but take guys that look at you. You give musar in a friendly way. I'm not good at this either. Let's work on this together. And the guy doesn't like it, so you have to try again and again. The Gemara says, no, when are you putter? So one mandama says, ad nezifa. Till he just gives you a very sour face. And the other mandama says ad klola, and the other mandama says hadakah, till you get hit. So Rabbi Yaakov says Rav Shita adakah is only a ptur in ochet achir, because if he's ready to hit you, then obviously you're not going to be effective anymore. Any other mitzvah, there is no such limitation. Unless there's going to be long-term emotional scarring or chas v'shalom it's physically dangerous. And that's why this shaila is not so pashut. It's not to downplay the psychological danger, it's to raise up our consideration of how chashuv kibbut avayim is and how much you have to be meiser nefesh. A good example of this, the Baal HaTurim says, in Pasuk Vayeshev, says Yaakov Avinu came back, and he came to live by Yaakov Avinu. The Baal HaTurim wants to know, and he has rayas only the Baal HaTurim does. He has similar words, which he finds throughout Tanakh to match things up in Tanakh if it doesn't appear that often. And he says, in essence, never thought of this before I saw the Baal HaTurim. He says Yaakov Avinu went home to his father to do kibbud av, and Esav HaRasha with all his men, his army, was still there. And he walked into a lion's den. He says, Mashal Echa Shara Kashak Lav me see some wild dogs, Rotzel and Ashra V'yashav Beneim, Kach Yashav Yaakov ben Esav Va'alufav. Which means on the way back in Paras V'yishlach, he had a very frightening run-in with them. And if you recall, to get rid of them, Esav offered, after they finally made up, why don't we walk together, and that's dangerous. Ruchnius and Gashmius. And Yaakov Avinu said, no, I'm very slow with the kids and with the sheep. You go ahead, mañana, I'll meet you there sooner or later. That wasn't a lie. We're going to lishparas har Esav. At the end of the time, we'll get there. We'll get there. Next day, the day after. You'd think, Baruch Hashem, you finally, every year we read Vayishlach. I don't know, I'm sweating every single year. It's a dangerous encounter. And then Esav disappears. Baal HaTurim says, not for long. Esav prided himself on one mitzvah, kibbut avayim. That's his whole schus. So he went, after Har Seir, back home to his father to do kibbut av. Now what? This is not much dangerous. So Yaakov Avinu thought about it and said, look, I've been away for so many years. Esav has a schus. I need this schus also. I'm going, come what? Yesh Yaakov Eretz Migrei Aviv. Amar Mashazach Esav l'chol hakavod hazeh b'schar hakibud. Elech v'akuf atzmi. I'm going to force myself, even though I'm frightened, rightfully so, and it's dangerous. V'achabed es avi b'chevron. That for a Baal term. It's real Mesiras Nefesh. There's an Orach Chaim HaKadosh, also a Pella. This is something to think about. It took me 3 nights to cover this, but I'll just throw out the pshat. You'll think about it on the way home. Orach Chaim HaKadosh wants to know, all the Mefarshim want to know, why didn't Yosef HaTzadik send a message to Yaakov Avinu that I'm alive all the years? No email then. He wouldn't have had it. Send a message. There's a shortage of Shayaris Mitzuyas from Eretz Yisrael to Mitzrayim and back. So you say when he was a slave, he couldn't send a message. Okay, well, he was chief of staff before he's thrown into jail, and afterwards he was viceroy. Why did he send a message? He knows his father is sitting, Avelis of all these years, his father, it's the first opportunity. Why did he send a message? Couldn't leave, he had a job. Okay, so send a message. So, the Chaim HaKadosh says perhaps it was dangerous because if the brothers had found out he's alive and he might let out the secret, they would come to seek him out to get rid of him again. He didn't know whether they did tshuva, and he didn't know, as you see from the next 3 parshas after that, he was trying to test them out to see if they did tshuva. Would they defend Binyamin, another son from Rachel? That's one consideration. Then the Or Chaim HaKadosh says that he was willing to take that risk, as we know he did when he went in the room alone with them, and they could have killed him, and the Kotza Medrash actually tried to kill him. And Gavril HaMelech had to put them all at the side of the room until they sorted things out. That's when he said, Ani Yosef. So Chaim HaKadosh says, which in Hilchos Kibbutz Avim is a tremendous chiddush, he says he didn't want to embarrass them. Embarrass somebody barabim, you have to maybe get yourself killed. Maybe, because the Gemara in Saita says, Mutuv shiyapal l'kiv shenaish. So Taisa says, why isn't it in the Gimel Aveis l'chameris? Mutuv? Mutuv sounds like you should, you have to. Taisa assumes you have to, and it's under Ritzicha. Taisa learns you have to mamish kill yourself. The Rambam doesn't bring it down, and they say the Rambam held that Mutuv, it was a Midas Chasidus, which is the problem with the Rambam, but the Rambam holds either Mechiv to get killed, or it's not Yavar Vayavar, you can't volunteer. But Mutar is at least an Indian, if not more. Yosef didn't want to send the message, because as soon as he sent the message, Yaakov Avinu would figure out that he was sold there. And it would be so embarrassing for his brothers, and it would put them possibly in danger, and Yaakov Avinu would curse them. So he didn't send it in consideration for his brothers. No. So you have consideration for all the shiftei kav versus consideration for his father. So what did his father lose? Don't know. This is an important, you have other considerations that you're trying to keep shalom in the family. You don't want siblings to be embarrassed. My guess is, but I'm not satisfied, that if you know the parents would agree with your cheshbon, by making that cheshbon, even though you're hurting the parents right now, then you can make such a cheshbon. I hope you're never in that situation. If your brothers try to sell you, please see me. But I think that's that can have a lot of ramifications. That you're making decisions now based on what your parents think, even though it caused them short-term tsar for the sake of the cohesiveness of the rest of the family. Tremendous chiddush. If the father asks you to do an avera, obviously don't listen. When I say father, I mean mother as well. The Rosh says that if the father tells the son not to speak to a certain individual, he's in a fight with somebody. It's a fascinating truth of the Minchas Elazar, where a son asked after his father had died, that he said his father told him that the reason he died is because that guy ba'aveled him. And Minchas Elazar says, do not run to the bank with this. Minchas Elazar says, in that case, he points out, there's a parsha that speaks about this, even though the Rosh is brought down on the Machaber, that you can't continue family machlokes, and you can't keep up your father's fight, even if they ask you to. And in this particular case, the Minchas Elazar says a tshuva, and he says the father left a tzavah that I shouldn't make up with this guy. No, it's against the Rosh. Minchas Elazar says, there you can. What's the raya? It's a whole parsha in Chumash, half a mesechta. Anybody? 2 words. Starts with a gimel. I just gave it away. I didn't give it away. Gol Adam. Isn't that continuing machlekes? Somebody killed his father, Rachmana litzlan. He's now going to take his shotgun and run after him and chase him all over creation. Why don't we just say, well, you don't continue the machlekes? He says, somebody ba'aveled him to the extent they put him in sakana, killed him? Of course you could. That's kibbut av. Any other case, and I hope you never deal with such a case, any other case, usually perpetuating the machlekes doesn't do anything for anybody, and you shouldn't be continuing it, he shouldn't be continuing it. The Chavetz Chaim has an arichas on this Shmiras Lashon, and he says that people are talking Lashon Hara and Baalei Machlekes, even though they're your parents, and they're upset with you, why aren't you supporting them? It's also to get involved unless you can make shalom. And he brings a raya from Bnei Korach, who was saved because of this. Father wanted to support, and they weren't sure who was right, because nobody was really sure. That was the challenge, but Moshe Rabbeinu was their Rebbe, and their father was the father, and they figured we're not supporting anybody. And when Moshe Rabbeinu came in, they didn't know whether to get up or not. In the end, they decided to stand up, even though that would be a slight to their father's kavod, because they said, I'm not sure who's right, maybe Tah's right, but Moshe Rabbeinu I know has always been right until now, and therefore they made that decision, which ultimately saved them. It's very difficult. That does not mean, by the way, and I have dealt with this with a number of families, it doesn't mean that you should go over to your father's enemy or two publicly, especially in front of your parents, and be his best friend. There are a lot of people in this world. You don't have to necessarily daven in the same shul, and you don't necessarily have to show him your old chummy, because the father's going to get more aggravated, and that's not right, and it's also counterproductive. Nafkamina is, you're at a chasna, and he comes over, and says, Chaim, I haven't seen you in so long, we used to be in touch. So then you can't say, I would like to, but my father's really angry at you, so please get out of the way. So that you can't do, because even if your father asked you to do that, that's perpetuating the machlokes, unless he ba'avled the father, which the father's going to claim, so much that it would be lack of kavod not to take his side. It's a serious shaila in both directions, and let's hope it doesn't come up. Let's go to the monetary issue. If chas v'shalom the parents don't have enough money, we paskin normally mishalav lo mishaben. The parents send you shopping. You have to go shopping, and when you get home, you can present them with the $200 shopping bill or whatever it is, and nicely you leave the bill on the table, or nicely you ask them for the credit card. If they don't pay you back, you do it another couple of times and then figure something out. But technically, mishalav means they have to pay. What happens if they can't? So the Mechaber says in Sif Hey, Zeh shemalchil mashkeu mishalav ve'em im yesh loy v'mein lav yesh leben kaifin asavazon aviv. Charity begins at home. So you're kaifa the child to pay. The Mechaber says even if the child has to go collecting, the Ramah says no, it's a regular chiv of tzedakah, but the tzedakah begins here. Mechaber doesn't mention this next proper, the Ramah does, and if all things are equal, the next question I get, this shaila comes up. And a good scenario, the son has a lot of money, he's happy to help out, and he's not happy his parents need it, and he's going to try to get it to them in a respectable way. They don't know it's coming from him. All that is a davar pashut. But the Ramah says you should not use Maisa money if you can afford it. He says, Tavu ma'era, that somebody used Maisa money. That's surprising to a lot of people. And the last conversation I had with somebody, I told them, don't give it to your father, get it in a roundabout way. And he said, can I use Maisa money? And I said, can you not? And he said, no, I can't afford it. So then you use Maisa money. But if you cannot use Maisa money, it's much more bekavadik, and there are other reasons behind this. We have no time to go into it now. L'chatchila, it should be other money, which, depending on the expense, could be too much for the child, in which case you go back to whatever money he has. The Mechaber continues in Sif Ches, the famous case, that's a purse with golden coins, that's a lot of money. And they're on a cruise somewhere, a kosher cruise to, I guess, Tel Aviv. Where else would he be going? And a separate cruise only with learning all day, and then at night, saying Niflis Abere. I can't give any more disclaimers. You'll figure it out. So they're on deck, and the father starts taking his wallet out of his pocket and throws it overboard. He wanted to see if money floats. So that's not a normal thing to do. The shaila is, what happens if he did it already? So most people start screaming and yelling. So the Mechaber reminds us, based on the Gemara, don't get angry. It sounds like when you go through Kibbut Avayim, it's talking to Malachim. Don't get angry. But this is Kibbut, it's unnecessary, it's a dibris, and you're not, if your friend did it, there's no mitzvah to scream at him either, but it's understandable. Here it's also understandable, but it's an isser. You can't get angry at them. The most powerful lesson, some Gemara. That's the most powerful lesson. You might not know this, but all your sons in camp are learning the sugi Kibbut Avayim. That's the minhag in camps, which is good. Children are away from their parents, and it's a good sugya to learn. It's a huge sugya, as you see from last year, this year, and next year, whatever we don't finish. And these things come up. It's like, well, when's the last time somebody threw somebody's wallet overboard? The answer is never happens. Many cases take place where it's a lot less of an avla, and people fly off the handle. So we have to extrapolate from this case that even this case, you have to calm down. And the Ramah says, let's say he doesn't have the wallet yet, he's just reaching into your pocket. You start thinking, this sounds like a Gemara. And then you start chazing the Gemara in your head and say, oh, I know what's next. So can you prevent it? Now that might take some wrestling or something. You can't even take a splinter out of your father or mother. A gzeira, you might cause too much blood. You certainly can't start hitting his issa deraisa, could be lead to a chiyuv misrach malatzlan. If you can daintily prevent it, yeshamim deraisa lizak maz shal ben liyam, the yachalamana, you could try to stop him. Daha enochayev lachabda rak mishalav, and this is your wallet. Vein chilik, Ramah says, bein lachabda latzara. So the Mechaber seems to be holding a shaila, is there a machlekes here? But if there is, the Mechaber seems to hold that to be mitzayir him, to embarrass him, to start wrestling with him without making a chabura, is to be mitzayir him, let him throw it overboard. You can take him to a din Torah later on, which is also not that respectful, but at least that's an orderly way instead of fighting on deck of a ship. And the Ramah says, no, there's no chilik, and you don't have to let him take the wallet. If he takes the wallet, then you can't get angry, and you can't take him to a din Torah. The issue over here is a parent who's throwing wallets overboard and the like sounds a bit abusive, and there's a lot written on what to do in these situations. The answer is, if it's the first time it happened, you don't expect it again. It was just a fit of outrage or a scientific experiment on flotation devices, whatever you had in mind. You don't understand it, so then you can't lose it. And according to the Mechaber, maybe you can't stop him. According to the Ramah, you can. If it's ongoing, and again, back to our 13-year-old child, it's ongoing, and these things are being done either out of spite, out of rishus, or just craziness, le'aleinu, that the children are going to be growing up emotionally too scarred, then you have to speak to the family rov and maybe the therapist and try to work out something where you're going to have some kibbut of aim intact and still have a normal situation. And the rare case where the child can't be there, or if it's a married child and they can't visit as often, okay, but Sternberg is going to remind us in a few minutes, don't jump on that too quickly, because the schusim here are, as we'd say, off the charts, arichas yamim and elam hazen, elam haba, and there's an art with Mesiras Nefesh and learning how to deal with even difficult parents, or parents are not difficult, but they're just older and things are difficult for them and they're more nervous, which comes with the territory. You can't just say, I'm getting emotionally scarred, I'm out of here. We're not that weak. We live in a dar that we can't handle anything, so we're getting more spoiled and more spoiled. There's got to be that balance, and each case is going to have to focus on what that balance is. We can't not defend the children, but we also have to defend the children in the ruchnius and teach them how to be able to cope with things, to be able to makayim this mitzvah, not lose out in this tremendous schar. There's just derech agav. There shouldn't be nageya, but the Gemara says Yud Beis Chedesh after a patir of a parent, Hareini kaparas mishkava. A parent has to say that. So Rashi says Hareini kaparas mishkava is a very tall order. It's that any unshim that should come on him should come on the child. So Moshe has a number of tshuvas. He denies. He says that that's not what it means. He's not arguing Rashi. He says it's an expression of endearment that if I could help him, I would. I can't. He's in Olam Haba or somewhere else, and I can't help him. I'm Be'elam Hazeh. All these stories you heard about selling Olam Haba and selling Shaar, I'm not saying they're all not true, but you can't sell Olam Haba, and you can't buy Olam Haba. And Pasha says you could do things as a child to help the parent, because whatever you do and you learn and you say Kaddish and all these things helps them, the Elam Emes. But Arena Kabbalas Mishkar is asking for Aisha. Moshe says, why should you have to take that on yourself? Quite a machlokes. So Ramesha says we don't really mean it. We say it as an expression of endearment. And the B'tzel Chachman and others say that they can't understand why Chazal would say that it's a din, it's a Gemara, it's brought down Shulchan, that you have to say those words. It sounds like you're supposed to mean it. Just, it shouldn't be nagea for another 100 years or so, but that's an important machlokes because the person has to say it. The question is, they're supposed to mean it. Normally we mean what we say. It shows you the fact that it even is a machlokes, and Rashi sounds like he's saying that. Ramesha says that can't be pshat in Rashi. That's also incredible Mesiras Nefesh. A person's asking, we have no asaga, the din of Gehenna, le'aleinu. A person's asking it should come on him instead of his parents, out of avos for his parents. That's an incredible amount of Mesiras Nefesh. The Chabura aspect we won't get into now. It's always with about 20 minutes to go I start thinking about what to skip. But the summer is here. Anybody playing contact sports with your father or your mother, if she likes that stuff? I suggest maybe volleyball if you both stand in the third row in the back. Even then, people have lobbed things over the net and hit people. That's not. But tackle football's out of the question. There's a gezeira you can't take out a splinter because he might cut too much. You certainly can't tackle him. If somebody gets bruised, there's bleeding underneath. And there's a shaila in the momentous, because we are focusing on money tonight. What happens? Series of tshuvas, Shlomo Zalman and the Gesher Chaim, Chukatinsky, from others. What happens? They had a case in Yerushalayim. The parents can't afford it. The son happened to be a Hatzalah member. And the mother needed shots every day, insulin, whatever it was, and it was expensive to hire a nurse. So what do you do? These shilas come up. What do you do? Can the son do it? Can the daughter do it? There's a nurse anywhere. She's not a nurse. She knows how to do it. It's not that. Can she do it? Somebody called me with a shayla yesterday. So the parents' hands are shaking and they need the shot. Can they do it? So if you have anybody around within a few miles, you should get them to do it. And often in a frum community, that's very doable. If you can afford it, you should hire somebody. If you can't afford it, nobody's around, and delaying would cause a sakana and a low sugar or something like that, you don't wait, and then it's mutter. The shayla Chukutinsky dealt with is they're saving money. So some took the angle, fascinating machlokes, that the son can't do it. Let him pay. We paskin mishalav. Answer is paskin mishalav, but we're protecting the son over here. We don't want him to do a bigger so cutting too much. That's his problem. And others say, no, it's not. Chazal said it's aser. It says aser. So the writer it's mishalav. So then why should he have to pay? That's quite a machlokes, and that does come up, unfortunately. And that's where it gets difficult. The playing of the sports. If your father is going up for a shot and you are playing basketball, let him shoot. You get 2 milas over there. Number one, he'll feel good about himself that he finally got one in, maybe. Let the old man, it's kedai. Before my sons became 6'2", I was also a Kanaker. Now, if I'm there, out of Rachmanis, I'm sure they'll let me get a shot off. Don't foul them, even if it's the minig. This is not camp, okay? Now, really, a simple thing like this, a hard slap, is a little bruise. That's bleeding underneath the skin. That's serious business. Besides the fact, it's probably more bekovadik when somebody goes up for a shot to actually let them shoot and play the way it was supposed to be played in the first place. So these actually, during the summer, these can be nogeya, so keep that in mind. The question, when the children have to pay, when the parents need help. So how do you split it up among the siblings? You'd be amazed that this is sometimes a cause for a fight. I know that's shocking to everybody here. Siblings fighting about money, and the parents are alive here. So what's the din? So the din is, it's not, believe it or not, I've had to tell people this is never pusha what I'm about to say, and the wealthier the children couldn't believe it. So what kind of democratic system is that? What did I tell them? I said it goes according to the income, as in sliding scale. The lower income of the siblings were just fine with that, and they understood that very well. I didn't have to explain to them at all. The other half of the family started pushing back. It's pashut. You give stock according to what you can afford. So if there are 10 siblings. So now the question is finding out who has what money, and everybody's pleading poverty. Okay. If the parents get wind of this, that they're fighting who's going to pay for this, and they find out that everybody's saying the other one should pay, you already have violated keep it of aim in a serious way. It's a bizayon. They shouldn't know you're paying for anything. And in Shulchan Aruch, it's pretty clear that you pay according to what everybody can afford, and you have to figure that out. The second thing that comes up a lot in Shuvas is a case where one child took the parents in, which is an incredible mitzvah. And the nursing home scenario is if it can't be done any other way. It's always a tremendous amount of serious nefesh to have the parents in, and the cost, if they have money, we paskin mishalav. If they don't, then, well, there are 2 scenarios. Either they pull the money according to the tax of each family, or one person does it. I've had this shayla, Baruch Hashem. One child stepped up and they called me. They said, I want the schus. I'm inviting them in the house, and they can't afford it. And either can he that much, but he's being Mesa Nefesh. And then he wants to know, could I make cheshbonis now and keep the cheshbon to take it off the top later? It's a reasonable question, because he ended up actually borrowing money to make it happen, because nobody had any money. So the answer is yes. The clever thing to do is to tell the other siblings and have it in writing that you're doing so beforehand. If you didn't, and there are tshuvas written on that, then you can claim, of course the siblings are now claiming you did it for free. Why are you making claims now? You can claim that you were not doing it for free. And it's a Beferish Ramah. The Ramah says, interestingly enough, it's Ramah. I've polled a number of people. I don't eat out that much. You'll understand why I say that. So I had to poll people. The Ramah in Hilchas Matana, Reish Mevav, and Cheshem Mishpah. If Ruvain invites his good friend, Achalimi, I want to take you out to eat some inexpensive place, reserve cut. That sounds right. That can't cost more than $20 a plate. Achalimi, and then they eat, and the guy comes over 3 hours later with the bill, and he turned to Uven, who would I give the bill to? And he said, split it, both of us. And Shimon all of a sudden fainted. And the din is, Sarach l'shalom loy, v'lo yamrinon, matana kayav loy. We don't say he meant it as a present. Well, why don't we say he meant it as a present? He invited him. So it's interesting. I've asked many adults this question, and they said, that's not a kasha Ramah, but they said they think the minig is when adults invite, we have a lot of adults here, right? If you invite your friend, Yaakov's a nice guy, you invite Yaakov, you want to go to Reserve Cut? So he said, sure, I haven't been there since last night. So he goes over, and then you walk in, you say, what are you ordering? And you don't make mention of anything. And so I would, you'll tell me what you think now or later, I would think many people assumed you're taking him out and you invited me. Some adults said, usually, not always, depends. Was there an occasion? Was it a birthday? I asked this question to Bachram. Bachram said, no, it's never pashut. I invite you out. It means he'd be happy if I don't ask him to pay. Of course, we're 5 Bachram going, and we're all paying our own way. So Amos says the working assumption then was you're paying your own way, and you're not covering somebody else's expenses, and that is used in the Taina with the Kibbutz Avim scenario, that even though he paid for everything for 25 years, he can come and say, no, I didn't mean to pay for that. I didn't want to bother you then. It was a bizayon for Mami Atati, but I planned on getting it back. And that taina, unless you have rayas fakert, will resonate. Rav Sternbach has a number of tshuvas, fascinating tshuvas on the nursing home scenario. And he reminds you over and over again that Kibbutz Avim, Hishva Kvedim Kved Amakom, which it doesn't do by any other mitzvah, except for Talmud Chacham. And he said it's not one mitzvah, taking them in, it's ongoing mitzvahs, night after night after night, day after day after day, 100 mitzvahs a day. With that said, it's not always possible, it's not always doable. Person's married, there's a spouse, sometimes the spouse is a tremendous ally for this, sometimes they can't handle it, depending on the complexities of the relationship, and you try to explain what a zchus it is for both of you. As a lot goes into the decision, but it's an incredibly important decision, it should be made slowly and carefully. What he does mention, and I thought this is fascinating, an answer Kasha I always had. The theme of Kibbutz Avim is that it's a mitzvah almost superseding any other mitzvah, except for Talmud Torah. And we put so much chashivas in Kibbutz Avim, which is why it's necessary to difference. Let me ask you a simple question. Why is it that any other mitzvah you have to pay up to 50 assets? That's a lot of money. All of a sudden, by Kibbutz Avim, we paskin mishalav v'lo mishaben, not one penny. All the other mitzvahs you got, by lulav, esek, you got to pay money. All of a sudden over here, you go shopping, come home, here's the bill. Why is that? It's a good question. The answer is that if you're really supporting them, the bills can be ongoing, and it's like supporting another family. Most people can't afford it. Most people couldn't afford it then for sure. Most people can't afford it now. And if they can afford it, why should you have to pay their food bill? The Kibbutz Avim is servicing them. They're not able to go shopping, so you go shopping for them. They can't cook, so you cook for them. They have money. Well, they're not charity cases. Why should they not pay? Sternbach makes the following argument, which I think is fabulous, the only tshuva I ever saw this in, and it's such an important point. He says, what is the din? And it dovetails with a famous ma'aseh of Rabbi Chaim. There was a guy in Brisk who was in Brisk at the time. He asked Rabbi Chaim, his father was in Warsaw, and he wasn't well, and he said, I have to go visit my father. My father wants me to visit. It wasn't a medical emergency. It takes a while to get there, and I really don't have a lot of money, and the train to Warsaw is a lot of money, and I don't think my father's going to pay me back. So what do I do? That's what he asked Rabbi Chaim. You're all thinking as Americans, what a klutz kasha. But in Europe, they didn't have a lot of money. We wouldn't think twice about a train ticket or a plane ticket for that matter. We fly in planes, go to chasnas. But he says a lot of money, and I don't think I'm going to get paid back. And I learned the sugya, paskin mishalav v'lo mishaben. So Chaim said, you're 100% right. Walk. So he said. So I always understood the story from the Musar aspect. Like, what kind of ridiculous kasha? Your father is not well, he's in Warsaw, he wants to see you. Like, go every day, you ask me a kasha, you might not get paid back. But you can't ask a kasha on a maisa. I thought you can't bring rice on maisa. This maisa, everybody brings in all the tshuvas. Because the lumdus here is very important. And that is that anything you could be doing yourself, you could walk, but you want to take a train because it's easier, so then you pay for that. That has nothing to do with the sugya. What I didn't understand, I don't fully understand it now either, I checked. Brisk is 130 miles, give or take, from Warsaw. I don't remember, 130 miles, 100 kilometers. That's a long walk. So what do you mean walk? Walk is the taina that, why are you lazy? You want to take a train? I understand I want to take a train. So walk. But nobody walks. So I figured out, when I heard the mice at first, I tried to get the details. I didn't come up with anything to support this, but I think it's never push it. It must be that people were poor then, and they walked. They walked from town to town to town to town to town, and the wealthier people, I told this over to my shver, and he said, my shver was raised in McKeesport. He said in the late 40s, early 50s, there was a guy who walked from McKeesport, Pennsylvania to New York. Hundreds and hundreds of miles. I said, come on. He walked? He said, I'm not saying he didn't get a lift any part of the way, but he walked. It took him a few weeks. Why did he do that? I thought he was going to tell me, keep it of aim. I don't know why he did it. He said he did it because nobody had an extra pruta. They were all refugees and they came. McKeesport. So they walked. So Chaim said, I know it's a long one. Now, the father needs him tomorrow, and he's chas v'shalom not going to be here, so then you don't walk for 2 weeks. But apparently it was done. Today, I believe, if my pshat is correct, then today, if somebody takes a plane to California, but his parents live there, and he says, who pays the bill? So Chaim wouldn't say, well, you lazy person, walk. Well, you want to be, you want. Nobody walks to California. We don't even walk down the block. So that's a pretty important nafkamina. If I'm reading it right, it's hard to know because I look for sources for the story. That's just one quick story. Rav Sternbach suggests, though, and this sort of answers my question, he says, I don't really understand the Ged over here. He himself says in a tshuva. He says, anything you would do for friends, anything you do as a matter of your daily activities, you certainly have to do for your parents. If your friends is getting married in Chicago, would you fly there? Of course you'd fly there. So all of a sudden, your parents in Chicago, they're in LA, and I don't know, do I have to pay? Mishalav and Mishal Ben. He says, he doesn't, this is unique. I didn't see any other tshuva say this. He says that he's not convinced that this goes under Mishalav and Mishal Ben. He said he heard a story, he's a Rav, he had a kill in South Africa. He said somebody in South Africa told him that he asked a different Rav about phone calls. There was a time, if you remember, we used to make phone calls. I remember from Flatbush to Muncie. When I grew up, they were expensive. And there was a time, I had a conversation with somebody recently, he was in the office talking to me, asking me a shayla, and I heard he got another call in the background. He screamed out, tell him I'm on a long distance call. He got back to me, I said, don't ever say that again. That sounds ridiculous. What do you mean you're on a long distance call? There is no long distance call today. He remembers it from his Girsad Yankasa. So this fellow asked, I'm calling from South Africa to Eretz Yisrael, wherever it was, who has to pay? So Sternbach says he was told that he doesn't have to pay. Mishalav V'lo Mishal Ben. Sternbach says he thinks it's wrong. He says, you're going to mail him postcards or else you're asking for the stamps? So what's the gather? It's the gather he feels is whatever's normal in a relationship that you would do for friends, or why should parents be worse? It's the ongoing expensive. You're going shopping every week. You have to buy all their food every week if they can afford it. But this, if it's crass to ask for it, now, this is a very common shayla. I've asked this countless amount of times. If parents live out of town and they want them to visit and they really can't afford the plane tickets to California, to Israel, it is a shayla and you can ask, but the get there that he's suggesting, I think, is very interesting. It's certainly noteworthy enough to figure out within the family dynamics and the financials what the din would be. Can we go another 5 minutes? We started... 5 minutes by me goes very slowly, you know that. So we'll, if anybody has daven shachris, let me know. Let me mention, we spent a while in Kibbutz Avim. I want to mention two dinim. One applies in the other direction to the kids, and then we'll finish up with spouses. What's the din with the bar mitzvah money? What's the din when somebody gives a gift to your children? So, as you're all aware, the Gemara says that if the children find a mitzvah, it goes to the parents, mitam eva. Gemara has a machlekes whether it means only little children, for bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah, or anybody samech al shulchan avim. We pass like Rabbi Yochanan that even if they're big children over bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah, if they're still samech al shulchan avim, which today is usually when they're still living in the house, then the mitzvah goes to the parents. Okay, how often did your kids come home with a diamond ring they found in the street in a place with Rav Akum? Doesn't happen very often. It could. But most of the time, parents don't ask them for it anyway. Shaila is, what's the din? So the Ramah says, Hu adin im hervichu b'schara b'malacha. This is huge. We start off with Metzia. Okay, Metzia doesn't happen too often. You found the Metzia, so keep it. What parents can ask them for a Metzia. Ramah seems to say, who had in their salary. Okay, now already we're talking money. And many situations, kids working, certainly if they're a little bit older, they're still living in the house, making a salary, you save it for your chasna money, save it whatever you want. I don't need the money, I don't want the money. In a good scenario, Baruch Hashem, that's the case. That's not always the case though. I've been asked many times by the children and the parents, they need help. So the good news is I've had many young women, not as many young men, because usually learning yeshiva, they're not making much money at that age. Many young women have asked me, I want to help out. My parents need help. How do I do it? So I tell them, there's a way to do it. Don't let your parents know it's coming from you. If you can do that and do it in a kavadik way. It's kavaldik when they ask, should they do it? Others ask, rightfully so, again, do I have a chiv to do it? I'd rather not do it, but I will do it if the halacha says I should. So the first thing you bring up is this Ramah. It says, you're asking, assuming it's your money, and should you donate to the pot? The Ramah sounds like you just said it's not your money. That's a pretty big nafkamina. And the Ramah seems to be, the simple reading of the Ramah seems to be supported by the Shach, and the Sivas has kashas which he discussed, the Al-Chashulchan takes the kashas, and he says he doesn't think that's pshat in the Ramah. He thinks that when they're working for the family business, it's one thing. If they have their own geschäft, it does not go to the parents. So it seems to be a machlokes achronim how we paskin on this. Shailas, who's the most like a mitzvah lavaraya? Obviously, I would counsel parents not to ask them for the money. Why start up if you don't need it? The question is, you have to sometimes know, at least when you're paskin the shailas, or asking the shailas, what's the ikar adin? And there is such a Ramah, and many read Ramah, that as they're still samech hashochan avim, it's not their money. If the parents tell them, you keep it, which is hopefully a good scenario, then fine. The question is, well, if they say, I'd love to have you keep it, we can't afford it, and we need your help. The interesting caveat to that is that if you're samech al shulchan avim, means you're supporting them. Caveat to that is that if you're supporting married children, let's say your son-in-law is learning, and you're having tremendous nachas, and all of a sudden your daughter found something, or daughter's making money, and you find out there's excess, and you need help. Nu, samech al shulchan avim. So the person can point out, not so quick. If you obligated yourself, let's say, to 5 years, then that's your heschayvis, and not samech al shulchancha. You're just filling your obligation. I thought that was interesting. So then that doesn't count. If it's now year number 60, you never promised that, then they're back to giving over their metzias and maybe their salaries according to the Ramah. Okay, we're going to save the spousal for next year. I'm going to end off with two just hashkafic issues briefly, and that is since we quoted Rosh Sternbach, I wanted to mention this concept he quotes in Tam V'das, which is his Sefer on Chumash. You might remember recently in Parshas Balak, Bilam gave us a number of tremendous compliments. It's a chiddush nifla that we're geris this, but it's not Bilam. Kosh Baruch Hu put the nevuah in his mouth, so it has kedusha and it's in Chumash. We even start off davening with it. Mateva Alacha Yaakov. So he says many pshatim and what this compliment is. Pasha pshat, the oil was facing a different direction. They didn't look in. They had tznius. They respected people's privacy. He says that he thinks Mateva Alacha Yaakov, as Bilam understood, that you didn't look at their houses as mere tents. This isn't just for the midbar where they were taka in tents. This is l'deri deris. This is a bracha for Klal Yisrael, a compliment for Klal Yisrael. And he says that the key to life is bearing in mind, certainly when it comes to halacha and finances, that we're here for our ruchnias only, and whatever money is around is to be used only for that purpose. And if you start believing it's all in the size of your house and the value of your house and the bricks that you own, then you're in trouble. So he says the godless of Klal Yisrael's Ma'tevu Alacha Yaakov is that Klal Yisrael looks at everything as a mere tent. He quotes the famous Ma'aseh of the Chofetz Chaim that Europe was poor. Within Europe, Rodin was even more poor, and within Rodin, you walked to the Chofetz Chaim's house, and there was nothing there. A rickety chair, a rickety table, no carpeting. Rebbitzin once asked to get just a wooden floor. He had a dirt floor. Chofetz Chaim says the Aniyim walk in with mud on their galoshes, and they're going to feel uncomfortable. So she pulled out her card. She said, Reb Chaim Eiser has a wooden floor. So he said, Reb Chaim Eiser, what's the shaykhis? He's a Nasi B'Yisrael. She didn't get her way. He meant it. She figured, Chaim Moser, two people running Kleisol, Chaim Moser and Chavetz Chaim. So they figured that would be Shova b'Shova. Chavetz Chaim didn't see the Tushtel at all. And they kept their dirt floor. And the famous Maisa was, there's an American businessman who came, and he walked in with a little suitcase, and he couldn't believe what he saw. I said, Rebbe, I got to get you some chair. Where's all your furniture? Thought maybe they just took them all out to put on a wooden floor or something. Where is everything? And he asked him, where's your furniture? He said, where's my furniture? I'm just passing through. And Chavetz Chaim said, so am I. That's the Matev Alacha Yaakov. And we have a house for one reason. Hachnasas Orchim. Within Hachnasas Orchim, charity begins at home, is to invite your children back because they need your support, and Mitzvah Shem, your grandchildren, because they need the support. I had one parent complain to me just last week. He says, what's the shear? I said, what's the problem? He said, I have 14 of them. They all want to come to the same Shabbos. I said, Baruch Hashem. Okay, so you got to figure out what you can handle. The second part of the Chasas Orchim is charity begins at home, your parents. And per Stormbach Shuva, the decision to take them in where you could take, you got the best nursing home in the world. No one's going to argue, not even a nursing home operator or owner. You could do a better job at home if you can handle it, even though sometimes it's rough. If the home is there as an oil in terms of the Gashmiyas, but only there to serve parents, children, Orchim, Aniyim, then you fulfilled this pasuk. And Mitzvah Hashem, we'll close with the Rambam, last Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, which is the last Rambam in Yad HaChazaka, and there's a reason for that. As you've noticed in life, a lot of halachas are often questioned or compromised or fought about because of monetary issues. Chiyuvim in the marriage, husband to wife, wife to husband, to children, living up to a chayvus that you promised, and in kibbut of aim, who's going to take care of it? You would think the old expression, 2 parents could take care of 10 children, and 10 children struggling to take care of 2 parents. The good news is, and this is very apropos for the 3 weeks and the 9 days, and the Mitzvah Shem Tisha B'Av, which will be canceled. The Rambam says, he's describing Tkufas HaMashiach. B'Isa hazman lo yiyeh sham lo rov lo melchama. Rambam passes like Shmuel, that the day-to-day existence, you won't get up out of bed and fly to shul. You'll walk to shul, drive to shul. But the Mailah of Tkufas HaMashiach will have a Beis HaMikdash, not a Mailah. It's crucial for Klal Yisrael. We'll have Kabbanis, we'll have the Kapara, we'll have the Kedusha. We won't have Shibud Malchus. The UN will cease to exist because they do nothing now. Somebody once asked me, where's all the money the Rambam is about to discuss going to come from? The Rambam is about to say, everybody's going to be sitting and learning. I said, 1 foreign aid bill from just America, forget the EU, 1 foreign aid bill. Just cut out all, they're doing it now almost. Everybody could sit and learn 25 times over. All 20 million of us. So then he asked me, I don't understand, who's going to run the stock market? So I said, you'll have to train somebody in. There's got to be a way to do it. It's going to be a different, we're not going to be in Manhattan, and we're not going to want to be in Manhattan. And the Rambam says, the purpose of this, there won't be any famine, there won't be any Muhammad, there won't be any kinna, no fighting. Why not? So the Rambam says in one line, and why were we fighting until now? Why were there wars fought every day since Nimrod? Money. Money, covered, all the same thing. Everything you need is going to be as plentiful as anybody would possibly desire. You would say, no, that's dangerous, and everybody's going to get on their yacht and start eating and making barbecues all day. The Rambam says, no, we're going to understand the purpose of all this. Not just the Yidden. So I suppose this Rambam means the Goyim will be working by day, so you have to have an economy and be kaveh itim and zayim mitzvahs at night, and we'll be learning all day and all night. For Tayyag mitzvahs, that's my conjecture. It says kol ha'olam. We'll become tremendous balim madrega, tremendous chachamim shenamar kimal aras deas Hashem kamayim liyam b'chasim. And Mitzvah Hashem, this will also do away with all these difficult financial shilas within the relationships And it'll be Shalom, it's Hashem, it'll be this Tisha B'Av already.
Shem Egen Shir Torah, Mrs. Boston, I'd like to give a big Yasher Koach to Rabbi Viener for the informative and important shir. Rabbi say another way to do kibbut of aim is if your parents are alive and well, you can sponsor a shir for the schus, Rikas Yom V'Shanim Tovis and Brias Aguf. If they're no longer with us, then you can sponsor Lilu Nishmasam. Tonight's shir is sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Aaron Tauber, Lilu Nishmas Aviv, Rabbi Yosef Viener, Alav Shalom. 50th yahrzeit is tonight. Chavches Tammuz and Nishmas Tzrura B'Tzorah Chaim. To sponsor a shir, call Irgun Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email tapecenter@yeshivanet.com. Yasher Koach to everyone for coming. CDs will be available shortly. Ruchananya ben Akashem, Hakadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakis, it's a Shel Fika, Hibelam Torah Mitzvahs, Shanem Alei Chofes, Aman Tzidka, Yagdul Torah V'Yader. Amen.